Narcissistic sister tries to seduce my fiancé before our wedding. Gets exposed on camera and disowned. I never thought my own sister would stoop so low. But then again, Dove was always like that, selfish, manipulative, and full of herself. She just could not stand the fact that I had built a life for myself, one that she thought I did not deserve. And when she saw me happy with the man I loved, she tried to destroy it in the most disgusting way possible. Dove is 29 years old, divorced, unemployed, and still living at home with my parents. She dropped out of college for some rich guy, thinking she had secured her future. But as soon as he realized what kind of person she really was, he divorced her. Now she just mooches off our parents and spends her time pretending she is too good for an actual job. Growing up, I never really had much of a relationship with her. She was always the golden child, the one who was beautiful and intelligent, the one my parents praised. Meanwhile, I was just there. People would go on about how gorgeous she was while I felt invisible. She took full advantage of it too. She would constantly put me down, making me feel like I was nothing, telling me nobody liked me. It was bad enough that my parents ignored my feelings, but the way Dove treated me as a kid made things worse. She had friends over all the time when our parents were not home, and they would go through my stuff, trash my room, even mess up my school projects. One time, they ruined a project I had been working on for weeks, and I nearly failed because of it. I wanted to tell Mom, but Dove threatened to show my classmates embarrassing pictures of me. At 14 years old, that was terrifying. She never took responsibility for anything she did. And honestly, telling my parents never helped. They always brushed it off. Dad would call her out on rare occasions, but Mom? Never. One time, she even used my phone to send weird pictures of me to my own group chat just to humiliate me. When I told Dad, she went and accidentally spilled coffee all over my prom dress and then played the victim, crying about how she did not mean to. After that, I stopped going to Dad for help too. For years, I could not figure out why she hated me so much. Later, I realized that she was just a narcissist, and her cruelty had nothing to do with me. She was like that with everyone. She cheated on every boyfriend she had, always looking for the next rich guy to leech off. Honestly, I hated admitting it, but she was a gold digger. Even her ex-husband, Jeremy, still talks to me sometimes, and the things he has told me about her, well, let's just say I am not surprised. She never changed, only got worse with time. But my life, it was finally getting better. I worked hard, got into my dream college, pushed through the struggle, and eventually landed my dream job. And that was when I met Atlas. Atlas was everything Dove was not. Smart, kind, and honest. We met at an office conference, hit it off right away, and after a few months, we started dating. We traveled, took trips, and just enjoyed each other's company. He was close with his family, so pretty early on, I met his parents and siblings. But when it came to introducing him to my own family, I hesitated. The reason? Dove. I knew her too well. She had always been the one to get everything she wanted, and now that my life was finally going in the right direction, I knew she would not be able to handle it, especially when it came to my relationship. But after a year and a half of dating, I could not put it off any longer. Atlas was starting to wonder why I had not introduced him to my family, and I could not keep making excuses. So, I told my dad about him. Dad was happy for me, said he wanted to meet him, and invited us over for dinner. I was excited, but at the same time, I was dreading it. I knew what Dove was capable of. I told Atlas all about her, laid everything out so he knew exactly what kind of person she was. He just smiled and told me not to worry, that he could handle whatever she threw at him. A few days after I told my dad about Atlas, I got a call from Dove. That was shocking because she never called me. Ever. Right away, she started asking questions about Atlas, who he was, what he did when I was bringing him home. She sounded weirdly interested, which immediately put me on edge. I had no doubt that Mom had already told her everything, and now she was trying to act all friendly. I knew exactly what she was up to, and I was not about to let her ruin the best thing that had ever happened to me. Now I am wondering, should I even take Atlas to meet my family? Or should I just invite my parents over to my place instead? Because bringing him around Dove, that feels like walking into a trap. Update 1. Thanks for all the advice. A lot of you asked for more details about Dove, so here we go. After her divorce, my parents' attitude toward her, especially my dad's, started to change. And honestly, she brought it on herself. She had always been smart in school, but once she got to college, she only cared about her looks and getting attention. That was when she met Jeremy. Rich, successful, and completely blind to who she really was. She ditched her studies for him, thinking she had her future secured. At the time, I was in my final year of school, studying for my college entrance exams. And Dove, she constantly told me I would never make it into my dream college. But I did. For the first time in my life, my parents were actually proud of me. They even threw a celebration party. But Dove, she could not stand it. She was not the center of attention anymore, and she hated it. So, what did she do? She hijacked my moment by announcing her engagement to Jeremy, right in the middle of my party. You could see it all over Jeremy's face. He had no idea she was going to do that. But it worked. The moment became all about her. Dove always bragged about the expensive gifts Jeremy bought her. She loved to rub it in my face, telling me I was ugly and that no man would ever want me, that I would never find a rich husband like she did. I fired back once, told her I did not need a rich husband because, unlike her, I could pay my own bills. She did not like that. A week later, she and Jeremy got engaged. I was already off to college, and I made sure not to attend. I barely spoke to her after that. Holidays were actually peaceful because she was living with Jeremy. And even when she was around, she was always off traveling, living the high life. After a year, they had a massive, over-the-top wedding. Of course, Jeremy covered most of the costs, but my dad chipped in a little, out of courtesy. The marriage did not last. 3 years later, they divorced. Turns out, Jeremy wanted kids, and Dove, she had no interest in being a mother. But instead of being upfront about it, she avoided the conversation for 3 years. Jeremy later told me that she was constantly drinking, partying, and flirting with other men. That she never really cared about him, just his money. He even showed me videos of her at bars, letting men put their hands all over her. Honestly, I do not know how he did not see it sooner. But of course, my parents took Dove's side. Said Jeremy was forcing her to have kids, even though he told me he never pressured her. After the divorce, she moved back in with my parents. She had nothing, no job, no degree, no savings. And she had no intention of changing. Within a month, she was back to clubbing, going on dates, and posting all over social media like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I had just landed my dream job, and my dad was finally proud of me. And that was when Dove started to really hate me. I never expected my sister to take things this far, but then again, I should have known better. Dove had always been spoiled, always had everything handed to her, and always thought she was better than everyone else. But when my father finally called her out, telling her she needed to get her life together and stop leeching off them, she completely lost it. Mom, as usual, tried to defend her. "Do not say things like that," she told Dad. But it was too late. Dove slammed the door so hard the walls shook. That was the moment my father finally saw what I had known my whole life. Dove was rotten to the core. That night, she came into my room, acting all high and mighty, telling me I could never be like her, no matter how much money I made. She went on about my weight, making nasty little comments about my belly and my face like she was still some queen bee in high school. I had spent years letting her words get to me, but this time, I just laughed. "Trust me," I told her, "I do not want to be anything like you. You should probably work on that attitude of yours." That must have really hit a nerve because she completely lost it, screaming at me to get out of her house. I just looked at her and said, "This is our parents' house. If anyone should leave, it is you." The next morning, as I packed my bags to head home, I noticed something: 2 of my dresses, both completely shredded. Someone had taken scissors to them. I knew exactly who it was. I took them downstairs, held them up in front of my parents, and said, "Look at what Dove did." Dad was furious. He called for her, ready to lay into her, but Mom jumped in to protect her again. "She's just going through a hard time," she said, making excuses like always. But Dad was done. "She needs to get her life together," he said. "I'm not going to keep supporting her if she acts like this." Dad did not take that well. And from that moment on, she hated me even more than before. For a while, I ignored it, let her be bitter. But then she started messing with Atlas. That was when things went from annoying to unforgivable. After a lot of thought and talking it over with Atlas, I decided there was no point in hiding him from her. She was going to find a way to insert herself into my life no matter what, so I might as well let her try and see what my man was made of. Some of my friends even encouraged it. Better to test him now than regret it later, they said. So, with a knot in my stomach, I took Atlas to meet my parents. And just like I feared, Dove threw herself at him. The second we walked in, she practically launched herself into his arms for a hug. Atlas, being the polite man he is, greeted my parents and tried to ignore her. But she was relentless. She had dyed her hair black, done up her nails, gotten a brand new dress, and was acting like she was the one he was there to see. At dinner, she rushed to sit beside him. When I told her to move, she gave me a glare, but eventually scooted over. She kept steering the conversation toward herself, asking Atlas about his hobbies, and every time he mentioned something, she immediately claimed she liked it too, even if it was something I knew she hated. Then she started making comments about how they were so compatible, throwing in little winks at me like it was some kind of joke. Atlas, bless his heart, was clearly uncomfortable. He ignored her as much as possible and focused on talking to my parents. But she just kept trying. After dinner, I went to take a quick shower, and that was when she made her next move. Atlas told me later that she waltzed into the room while he was alone, pretending she had lost her phone and needed him to call her number. He did, not thinking much of it, but of course this was just a trick to get his number. And she did not stop there. While I was still busy, she started laying it on thick, playing the victim card about her divorce, going on and on about how much pain she had been through, practically begging for sympathy. And the worst part, Mom actually joined in, trash-talking Jeremy right along with her. Atlas, thankfully, was not falling for it. Later, when I was done with everything, Atlas casually asked if I wanted to take a walk with him, maybe show him around the neighborhood. Before I could even answer, Dove jumped up and said, "Sure." Atlas looked at her like she was crazy and said, "I'm in alone. With her." The look on her face was priceless. She turned red, mumbled something under her breath, and disappeared into her room. It has only been a few days since that visit, but I know she is not done yet. And honestly, I'm not even scared. I trust Atlas. I just want to see what kind of trick she tries next. Update 2. Big news. I am engaged. Atlas proposed last month while we were on a trip, and of course I said yes. I still cannot believe it. He got down on one knee with a ring and everything. It was perfect. And yes, even after that disastrous visit, Dove still kept trying to get his attention. First, she started texting him, asking how he was doing, acting all friendly. Then she started bombarding him with cat videos. Atlas is a huge cat lover, so when she found out, she went out and got a cat just so she could send him videos of herself playing with it. For the first couple of weeks, Atlas would show me her messages, laughing at how desperate she was acting. She would text him things like, "Hope you had a great day," and thinking about what you said about work, I totally get it, like she actually cared. Then, after a while, he stopped showing me. I thought maybe she had finally moved on, but then I was scrolling through my social media and saw that Dove had added Atlas on her account. And not only that, she was going through and liking every single post he had ever made, even ones from 10 years ago. Something fell off, so I checked his phone, and there they were, all her texts, unread but still coming in, constantly. And then I saw the calls, multiple missed calls. One of them, 3 o'clock in the morning. That was when my stomach dropped. I confronted Atlas about it. He got nervous, said he had been ignoring her, and did not want to bring it up because he thought it was better we just did not talk about her. I pressed him about the calls. Finally, he sighed and explained. One night, Dove had called him, acting all upset, saying she was going through something. He got worried, thinking something was actually wrong. Then she started rambling about how Jeremy had traumatized her and how she just needed someone to talk to. Atlas shut her down immediately. He told her she should be calling her parents, not him, and that if anything, she should have come to me first. That was when I lost it. I told him that if he ever hid something like this from me again, I might not be able to trust him. He promised me he would never fall for her games, but I was done waiting around. I told him that the next time she called, he needed to hand me the phone. I wanted to hear it myself, and sure enough, a few nights later, her number popped up. Atlas handed me the phone. I answered. Dead silence. Then, After a long pause, she mumbled, "Oh, that was a mistake," and hung up. I tried calling her back the next day multiple times. She ignored every single one. So I texted her from Atlas's phone, told her I knew exactly what she was doing, that if she needed something, she could call me, not him. And just like that, she stopped. Or so I thought, because when she found out we were engaged, she came right back. The moment I hung up, my phone rang again. It was my mom. She was furious. "How dare you talk to your sister like that?" she yelled before I could even say hello. Apparently, Dove had wasted no time spinning her version of the story. She had gone crying to Mom, acting like the poor, innocent victim, telling her I had accused her of trying to steal my fiancé. Mom, of course, fell for it. "Your cruelty has given your sister panic attacks," she snapped. "Can't you show some compassion? She is still recovering from her traumatic divorce." I almost laughed. Dove, depressed over her divorce? Yeah, right. She had been out clubbing and hopping from guy to guy within weeks of leaving Jeremy. The only thing that upset her was watching my life turn out better than hers. I did not even bother arguing. I just said, "If you keep making excuses for her, I am done. I am not going to be your punching bag anymore." Then I hung up. I meant every word. I was done. Update 3. I knew Dove was a terrible person. She had tormented me for years, bullying, body shaming, tearing me down every chance she got. But I never thought she would try to seduce my fiancé. We were deep into wedding planning when it all happened. I had barely spoken to Mom since our last fight, but one day, she called me out of the blue. She actually apologized for yelling at me, said she got scared when she saw Dove having panic attacks, that she had just lost control in a moment. I did not buy it, but I let it go. Later, one of my cousins filled me in on what was really happening. Dove had been sobbing to everyone who would listen, telling them how cruel I was, how I was falsely accusing her, how I was undeserving of my happiness. The job, the engagement, most of all, Atlas. In her mind, since she was the beautiful one, she deserved the best. Not me. I told Mom this, and she just sighed. "Let it go," she said. "Focus on your wedding. Focus on your happiness." So I did. Dove, surprisingly, stayed quiet. She kept a low profile in the weeks leading up to the wedding. At least, that is what I thought. The morning of my wedding, I was in my bridal suite, getting ready for the biggest moment of my life, when Atlas's best friend called me. "Hey, you need to come to Atlas's room. Now, and bring your parents." I chuckled, assuming it was some kind of pre-wedding joke. "Atlas cannot see me before the ceremony." His voice was dead serious. "This is not about that. You need to come. Right now." My stomach dropped. I grabbed my parents and rushed to Atlas's room. What I saw made my blood run cold. Atlas was lying there shirtless, barely conscious. His best man and groomsmen were pacing around the room, looking furious. His best friend turned to me. "Dove did this." Atlas had been in his room, getting ready, when Dove waltzed in with a drink. She insisted he take a sip. He refused, but she kept pushing. "Come on," she said. "It is a special day. Just one sip." To shut her up, he finally took a small sip. Immediately, something felt off. His head started spinning. His body felt sluggish. His vision blurred. Realizing something was wrong, he excused himself and went to the bathroom, barely managing to call his best friend before he lost full control of his body. By the time his friend got to the room, Atlas was half passed out, and Dove was on top of him, undressing herself, rubbing against him. His best friend had the presence of mind to record the whole thing. When Dove noticed him standing there, camera rolling, she smirked and covered herself up. She tried to play it off, acting like they had been making out. Then she had the nerve to tell him, "Do not tell anyone about this." She thought she had won. She had no idea she had just been caught on tape. When my parents and I arrived, Atlas was still struggling to sit up. The spiked drink had completely messed with him. The leftover drink was still in the glass, and you could see whatever she had put in it. Solid particles settled at the bottom. Mom's face went pale. Dad looked ready to explode. Mom called Dove and told her to come to Atlas's room immediately. She strutted in without a care in the world, her lipstick smudged, acting like she had won. Before any of us could say a word, she smirked and said, "I know you are all mad, but relax." It was mutual. Atlas has been making moves on me since the day we met, and today, he begged me for one last hookup before his wedding. The room went dead silent. Then, out of nowhere, Mom slapped her. Hard. You think we do not know what you just did? She shouted. You think we do not have proof? For the first time, Dove looked nervous. Her eyes darted to Atlas's best friend, who was holding up his phone. Want to see the video? He asked coldly. Her face drained of color. Dad, tell them they are lying, she stammered. Dad stepped forward. Pack your things. You are leaving. That was when Dove panicked. She started screaming, calling us liars, saying the video was fake, that we were all out to get her. But it was over. Security physically removed her from the venue. Dad personally made sure she was banned from entering again. The doctor confirmed that Atlas had been drugged, that the drink had been deliberately tampered with. Atlas's family was livid. His parents wanted to press charges. His brothers were ready to find Dove and make sure she paid. My parents could not stop apologizing. Atlas spent the next few hours recovering, throwing up, trying to flush whatever she had given him out of his system. Our wedding was delayed. The guests were all talking. News spread fast. By the time we actually made it down the aisle, half the people there already knew what had happened. When Dad walked me down, I could feel the weight of everything that had just happened. Atlas and I exchanged vows. At the last moment, he added something extra. I promised to protect our relationship from anyone who does not want to see us happy. After we got back from our honeymoon, my parents came over. They apologized again to Atlas. Dad told us Dove was gone. She had been kicked out of the house, told to figure out her own life. I should have felt relief, but I was still shaken. My wedding had almost been ruined. And the scariest part? If Atlas's best friend had not recorded what happened, I might have actually believed Dove's lies. It still makes me sick thinking about how close she came to getting away with it.